my training. I have a couple engineering degrees. However, my career was such that I never really got to be an engineer. I always ended up being somehow involved with um, trying to make things work. I spent most of my career in senior management. I was the director of operations or vice president of several large companies where I had uh, 42 plants around the world. And I used to travel to plants and visit them. My daughter was born in Brazil, and our son was born in Indonesia.
Really?
And had some excitement in a couple of places. Happened to be in Iran during the overthrow of the Shah, and I was one of the targeted persons to be assassinated for his birthday. He was turning 60 at the end of October 1978, and I was one of the guys targeted to be assassinated. And we had been held by gunmen in Brazil that had killed everybody. And before we went to over there, and I told my management, I said, look, I'm not staying around for this. I want to get out of here. Well, my boss had come over and he was basically telling me, look, you can go back to the States. He says, it's be on your dime. And he says, when you get there, you want to have a job. But that night we were supposed to go out to dinner. And at the time in Iran, there was a curfew. You had to be off the street by 9 o'clock. And so we had reservations at 7. About 5:30, he came to me and he says, you know, those reservations we have at the place, you know, it's for 3 of us, himself and my wife and I. And he says, could you increase it to 5? And I said, sure. I said, who are the other 2? And he says, well, it's our joint venture partner and his wife. And so I said, well, I went home and I told my wife, I said, could you call them and get the reservations increased? And she said, well, who was it? And I told her. And she said, well, we can't go to that restaurant. She said, the joint venture partner and his wife are really shy, quiet people. And she said, but the place we're going to is really noisy and a lot of things going on. And they just won't talk. She said, we ought to go someplace else. So we decided we'd go to the French restaurant, which was very nice and quiet. Picked up my boss, took him there, and he was not very pleased. But we had a great night. And about 2:30 in the morning, I get a call from the embassy, and it said, Mr. Stillwagon. I said, yes. And they said, Mr. Stillwagon. I said, yes. Well, it turned out the people who got our table at that other restaurant were killed. There was a satchel bomb under the table. And so I dodged a bullet there. And next morning, I picked up my boss, and he was very apologetic. And he says, it was really nice that we went to a place that was so quiet. And then I told him how quiet it was. He told me taking back to the hotel. He said, good luck to you. Don't worry about it. Anything that I told you yesterday, he says, you'll be taken care of. And he says, good luck. And he left. He got on a plane. I never did see him again. He was so shocked. But that was one of the experiences.
And Woody, why were you guys on the assassination list?
Well, I had in Iran, the early in 1978, Jimmy Carter came over and proposed that they have a free government in Iran. And at the time, it was just a monarchy. And people started raising Cain and said, yeah, it's right. Let's do what he says and all that. Well, finally, the Shah conceded about May, and he says, okay, let's do this. He said, we'll have elections, we'll elect people. And he says, you can have parties. Well, overnight, there were 17 parties came into existence. And then the Shah had a party. Shah had 60% of the vote, and the other 40% were divided by the other people. And so there was no chance that anybody was going to beat the Shah. But finally, in July, somebody asked President Carter who he was going to support in the Iran thing. And he said, well, he was going to support the Shah. Well, when he said that, everything turned sour there. And everybody went on strike, and the borders were closed, and everybody was running out of material. Well, I was the management of a company there for International Nickel. We had 2 plants. We had about 5,000 employees. And what we did is we bought our competition out. And so I had all the material that we had and all the material they had. Well, Iran was one of these countries, if you didn't have the materials, you couldn't make anything. And everything was imported. Well, I was one of the few companies that was still able to produce products while this was going on. And as a consequence, I was undermining the effort of these people to overthrow the Shah, because they'd see my people, and I had 5,000 of them every day going to jobs and things. And so there were 60 people targeted to be assassinated. That's how I got to be one of the 60, because I was upsetting the apple cart in overthrowing the Shah.